you can subscribe to Spotify and these other Pandora and these other things that get you your own selection of music. And it's that way if you go to buy a television set. Have you gone to buy a television set in the recent past and seen the dizzying array of choices and the combinations and permutations, the LED, you know, the LCD, the plasma, and all the rest of it, and the television set that will darken itself according to how much light's in the room, and all the other multiplicity of choices that you have, and from a multiplicity of vendors. And yet the opponents in this argument on right to work want to tell you that a one-size-fits-all labor policy, straitjacketing every workplace in the state into one-size-fits-all, is the way to go in the 21st century. The same people who oppose school choice, of which I'm a passionate proponent, as I don't believe that a one-size-fits-all education system designed 150 years ago when America was an agrarian society will do. I don't think that'll do in the 21st century, when we're all about choosing, each choosing his or her own path. And that's what right to work is about. And that's why the forced union states in the Northeast are home to the 10 fastest dying cities in America. And that's why the winter states in the South and West are attracting talent, and especially young people. Now, we're a border state, right? We can be Midwestern. We can be, as you might be able to detect from my accent, I'm only 170 miles north of Memphis, where I grew up, and so I have a little bit of that in my accent, and I spent some time in Tennessee growing up. But my folks have been here for 8 generations in Missouri. We came to the Missouri Territory around 1800 from North Carolina on both sides of my family. I'm not going anywhere. And I know Missouri can be a Midwestern state or a Southern state, but I want us to be a winner state. A winner, not a loser state. I don't want to pick up Forbes magazine next year or the year after that and see when St. Louis's population, which was 850,000 in 1950, 850,000 when my father was in medical school there in the 1940s. Today it's about 317 or 320. I think only Detroit has suffered a more catastrophic outflow of population than the city of St. Louis. And the people who oppose me and the arguments you will hear if you come to hear Representative Frame on Monday say, keep the policy we have. No changes needed. We're doing great. They want to try to tell you that this is the right track. Do you believe it? Will it stand up to even cursory analysis? We're in trouble, folks. The state I love is in trouble and is in danger of moving into the category of long-term loser states. We're not there yet. But a few more years of complacency will put us there. It might interest you to know that demographers and folks at the Census Bureau are already looking ahead to the 2020 census. You know what they're seeing? Our current trajectory is on track for Missouri to lose another congressional seat and go from 8 to 7 after the 2020 census. Do you think it's time to consider some new policies? Some more business-friendly policies, some policies that would put more money in workers' pockets and less in the pockets of union bosses who get paid big 6-figure salaries and go to fancy retreats in January and fancy ritzy resorts in Florida and other great Mediterranean or subtropical locales. I think we need more freedom in this country and more freedom in this state. I want to reverse this. I'm not satisfied with this. Governor of Missouri is satisfied. He stated his definitive judgment at his State of the State message, and you can get the YouTube and watch it, where he said, we're just doing fantastic. And he cited the progress, which is real, at the one auto assembly plant at Wentzville that still operates in the St. Louis region. But he's trying to tell you that one that's doing okay suffices when 8 years ago we had 4. I don't know how many UAW auto members we had, maybe 13, 14,000. Now we have about 3,000. And we're doing fine. What's it going to take? Another 7 years of this economic trend to bring us to 2021 when we get an announcement from the Census Bureau? Sorry, Missouri, you've lost another seat. Your state that had 16 seats in the 1920s when my parents were born into that decade now has 8 as we sit here today, and short 7 years from now could have only 7. I don't think that works. I don't think it works for anyone. And I will tell you this also. There is real desperation among a lot of people. If you go out and visit with folks at diners, at coffee shops, at union halls, in the St. Louis region, in our state. Because you'll meet people who, had you had this conversation with the server at the coffee shop 8 years ago, you say, strike up a conversation, what does your husband do, or what does your boyfriend do? Oh, he has a good job. Was that right? Yes, he works on the line at Chrysler. He gets paid $70,000. He has a good package of benefits. We have a good life. Gone. Gone. And not coming back. Now, some of if you study history, you'll know that when I was in school in the late 70s, there was a vote on this in Missouri. 1978. And Missouri voters rejected it by a margin of 60 to 40. One of the arguments made then was the loss of union jobs if right to work passed. Well, here's another data point about the Missouri economy and the St. Louis economy. The old saw about St. Louis 100 years ago was, or 80 years ago, or 60 years ago was, St. Louis was first in shoes, and first in booze, and last in the American League. St. Louis had an American League baseball team until 1953 called the St. Louis Browns, and they moved to Baltimore and became the Orioles, where we outsourced them to Baltimore, and they've done a whole lot better there. But our booze company got sold. Anheuser-Busch got sold in 2008, about 6 years ago. And in my adult lifetime, the shoe companies are still headquartered in St. Louis, but shoes have moved overseas. The Missouri I grew up in the 60s and 70s, every little town in southeast Missouri, my native area, had a shoe factory. Bernie and Sykeston and Dexter and Kennett and Poplar Bluff and Cape Girardeau and Jackson and all these other towns in Fredericktown. They all had a shoe factory employing 350, 400, on the high side 500 people. And in my adult lifetime, due to inexorable economic forces that no one could have stopped, all that shoe production has left Missouri and left the U.S. And 80% of the shoe production in the world has been in China in recent years. And by the way, the same inexorable forces are changing that also, and shoe production is moving out of China to Sri Lanka and Thailand and Bangladesh and lower cost producers. No one can stop this. But the argument in 1978 made against right to work was, if you pass right to work, we'll lose all our shoe factory jobs. We did not pass right to work. We defeated it, and the shoe factory jobs left over the next 30 years. Again, never to come back. The only constant, some wise man said it many, probably centuries ago, change is the law of life. Change is the only constant. And I'm talking about economic life. And we all must acquaint ourselves with that and accommodate ourselves to it. It is not 1955 anymore. It's not 1965 anymore. It's not 1975 anymore. It is time for Missourians to look forward to new policies, to emulate the winner states, not the loser states, the winner states. Nobody put a gun to the head of the 360,000 people who formed that net in-migration to Texas last year. We hear all these horror stories about low social services in Texas and high this and low that, bad statistics. People are moving there for a better life. No one forces them to. If things were so great in these other states, people would be moving in. They're not. Now, 2 states did pass right to work since in the last 3 years and 1 month, because Indiana did it in February of 2011. Indiana is a much, much more industrialized and unionized state than Missouri is. It's an old Rust Belt steel and auto state to a greater degree than Missouri is. And they are now a right to work state. Governor Mitch Daniel at the time, former Governor Daniel, signed the bill into law, and the next week Toyota executives called him and said, you know, that plant we've had in Indiana, we've seen what you did, and we're going to add $800 to $900 million investment and employ many, many more people because of that action. Michigan did it just not that much over a year ago, December of 2012. Michigan is seeing a similar stirrings of a renaissance, falling unemployment. Michigan basically had about a decade-long recession. Michigan was in recession long before the rest of the nation fell into recession in the second half of 2008. Michigan has suffered terribly under forced union policies. Detroit, let's talk about Detroit just a minute. In the 1920s, Detroit was called the Paris of the West. The highest per capita income of any city on the planet. Now, I don't doubt that the trade union movement arose in Detroit in the 20s, 30s, and 40s because it was needed at that time. I don't doubt that a bit. And I respect those who sacrificed to bring the trade union movement to where it was. But the conditions that obtained in the teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, no longer obtained. And what has happened to Detroit? In 1950, there were 1,800,000 people in Detroit, and today there are 700,000 people left in that desperate city that has filed bankruptcy, and you've read about it. You can buy a house there for $1,000, less than you could buy a car for. You could buy a block of houses for a few $1,000s, because such is the abandonment. They can't keep the streets lights on. They can't maintain public safety. Public safety officials are telling people to arm themselves to protect themselves, their lives, their properties, their homes, and their businesses. And they're in bankruptcy court. There's going to be a lot of losers and a lot of pain, because 6 decades and more of uninterrupted union control, that's where it takes you. It doesn't take you to present day Austin, Texas, or San Antonio, or Dallas, or Houston, or the other cities I mentioned. It takes you to defeat, decay, bankruptcy, and despair, and that's what you have in Detroit. So, I have spoken for the better part of 45 minutes, and we got to be out here in 5 minutes. And I'm about to lose my voice. I don't know if anybody can fetch a cup of water, but I could use one. I'd be happy to try to respond to any questions or comments that you have. Yes?
In your opinion, what does right to work mean for a college student, besides voting?
What does right to work mean for a college student, in my opinion?
Someone that's graduating and entering workforce.
Well, I tried to give some indication of what I think it means for college students, but what it means is a rising tide that can lift everyone's boat, that can provide vibrancy to an economy. I think it is inarguable and indisputable that Texas's economy is far more vibrant, filled with far more opportunity. I don't know how many of you visited Texas in recent years. You can feel it. You can feel it when you get off the plane in San Antonio or Austin or Dallas or Houston. You can feel it. You don't feel it walking through a vacant Lambert Airport at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, as I did recently on a trip. Just 2.5 weeks ago. I arrived, you know, on the lower level where the baggage, and I looked to my left and I looked to my right, and there were 5 people down there, and I thought, am I in Topeka or Peoria or, you know, Decatur? No, I'm in St. Louis. I'm in Lambert, St. Louis International Airport. Wow. And then you fly through Atlanta. My God, tens of thousands of people going places. Now, Atlanta has other things going for it. There's still the Delta. I know all that. But I've seen the decline in my lifetime. I want to do something about it. Let me put it to you this way. I'm in the last half of my 50s. The decisions that will govern how I live my life and what kind of economic circumstances will prevail as I live my life have largely been made. The decisions that govern how you live your life mostly have not yet been made. I want to do something to reverse that, and I want to do it for young people, and that's why I think it applies directly to your concern. Anyone else? Thank you, Rob. You're welcome. Yes?
What's the likelihood of this year the right to work legislation being passed? Because I know paycheck protection just passed the House.
We shall see. Paycheck protection passed with 83 votes yesterday. A controversial measure like right to work. That passed last year and landed on the governor's desk and was vetoed by him. And in a switcheroo on the floor of the Senate, 2 Republicans did not stay with their previous votes, and they failed to get the necessary 2/3 override. So that's anyone's guess. This year, I believe that bill has a referendum clause sending it to a vote of the people, but it's now in the Senate, and its handling is uncertain. The answer to your question on right to work as to its prospects is anyone's guess. It has been stated publicly by leaders that a vote is coming this week on the floor of the House. That right there is history. If you want to come down, attend to social media for the day. It looks like it could perhaps be Wednesday. No right to work measure has ever reached a vote on the floor of either house of the General Assembly in 190 years of statehood. So that is history, just the fact that it's coming to a vote. And I believe the votes are there and can be summoned to pass it through the Missouri House, but we will see. Because if what I believed or what I forecast is going to happen means nothing until you get out in the arena and see how people actually tally their vote when the board goes up.
Yeah, Rob. Governor, in case some of them may not be familiar with the provisions of the Missouri legislation, could you give a little summary of that?
Right to work, the simplest form says that you shall not be forced, perhaps I should have said this at the outset, I'm sorry. You should not be forced to belong to a union as a condition of employment. Right now, Missouri is a closed union shop state. That is, if that certification vote was taken, no matter when it was taken, 1939, 1948, 1960, if they established the XYZ union as the exclusive bargaining agent, you have to belong to that union and pay its dues to be a member and to be employed at that shop. Right to work would say, not so. You don't have to. So, it is 1:52 by my watch, and I'm supposed to be out. And he's not a student, he's a left-wing union activist, and he can get his own forum. He can absolutely, they've taken down every word I've said. He can attract his own crowd to, or I'll debate him sometime. I will debate you in the future at a place that we can choose, but I'm not going to answer his question today. Thank you all for coming out.